The monitors beeped wildly as Theodore Lancaster, one of Chicago's wealthiest businessmen, gritted his teeth against the stabbing pain in his chest. Nurses rushed into the private hospital suite, but when the young black woman in scrubs approached with a syringe, he shoved her away. "I don't need help from you," he spat, his voice dripping with arrogance. "Get me someone more qualified." The room went silent. The nurse froze, her eyes filled with quiet dignity. The other staff exchanged uneasy glances, but no one spoke. No one dared challenge the billionaire whose money could make or break this hospital. Theodore leaned back against his pillows, smug. He thought his wealth could buy him invincibility. But within hours, he would learn the most brutal truth of his life. The very woman he humiliated was the only one who could save him. If you are enjoying this story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like the video, and comment where you are watching from. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories, and trust me, you won't want to miss them. Her name was Amara Johnson, a registered nurse with years of experience in critical care. She didn't flinch at his words. She'd heard worse before, but something about the disdain in Theodore's eyes stung deeper. "Sir, your blood pressure is unstable," she said firmly. "You need this medication now." Theodore sneered. "Don't lecture me. Do you have any idea who I am?" "Yes," Amara replied evenly. "You're a man whose heart is failing. And right now, that makes you just like everyone else." The billionaire turned his gaze toward the attending physician, Dr. Hughes, a man who had long learned how to bend to power. "Find me another nurse. Someone else. I don't care if she's the only one available. I won't be touched by her." Dr. Hughes hesitated. "Mr. Lancaster, Nurse Johnson is the most qualified on staff tonight." "Then get someone else," Theodore barked, "or I'll make sure this hospital never sees another dime from me." Amara set the syringe back on the tray with steady hands. She wouldn't beg for the chance to save him. She wouldn't degrade herself for his approval. "I'll step out," she said quietly, and left the room. Behind the closed door, she pressed her palms together, whispering a prayer for patience. She knew arrogance could be deadly, and tonight, it might cost him more than his pride. Theodore Lancaster's world blurred as the sharp, tearing pain ripped through his chest. The smug grin he'd worn only hours earlier was gone, replaced by a twisted mask of agony. His assistant's voice crackled on the floor where the phone had fallen, but Theodore could no longer form words. His body, which had once commanded boardrooms and empires, now betrayed him completely. Dr. Hughes rushed in, barking orders. "Get oxygen! We need cardiac support in here now." Two nurses scrambled, fumbling with equipment. Theodore's chest rose and fell in shallow, erratic bursts. Sweat drenched his temples. A man who had always been in control was suddenly fighting to hold on to consciousness. But as panic spread across the room, one truth became obvious. None of them had the skill to handle what was happening. Not without Amara. Dr. Hughes snapped at a junior nurse who trembled as she fumbled with an four line. "No. Not there. You're wasting time." His voice cracked with uncharacteristic fear. "Where's Johnson?" The room fell into silence. Everyone remembered the billionaire's words, the venom he'd spat at her. He'd made it clear he didn't want her near him. "Sir, she left the floor," one nurse whispered. "She said she'd work the East Wing instead." Dr. Hughes cursed under his breath. "We don't have the luxury of pride tonight. Call her back, now." Amara Johnson was reorganizing medication trays in the quiet East Wing, trying to center herself. She hated being dismissed, hated the sting of casual prejudice, but she had long ago learned to swallow her pride for the sake of patients who truly needed her. Still, tonight felt different. Theodore's cruelty hadn't just insulted her, it had cut into a wound she'd carried for years. She thought of her father, a hard-working janitor who had collapsed on a factory floor 15 years ago. His supervisor had delayed calling for help, dismissing him as lazy and exaggerating. By the time paramedics arrived, it had been too late. Amara's father had died not from his failing heart, but from the prejudice that saw him as less than human. And now here she was, standing in a hallway, because another powerful man looked at her skin and decided she wasn't good enough. Her pager buzzed violently. She read the message, Code Blue, Room 504. Immediate assistance. Room 504. Lancaster. She closed her eyes for half a second. Fate had a cruel sense of irony. Her feet moved before her mind could resist. She was running back toward the very man who had rejected her. Inside the suite, chaos reigned. Theodore was barely conscious now, his breathing shallow and uneven. His pulse fluttered weakly beneath his damp skin. Dr. Hughes looked up in relief as Amara entered. "Johnson, thank God. We're losing him." The room stilled when she approached the bed. The billionaire's eyes flickered open for a moment, locking onto hers. Even in his weakness, there was resistance in them, pride that refused to yield. "Not her," he gasped. Amara didn't flinch. She leaned close, her voice low but unyielding. "Mr. Lancaster, you don't have a choice. It's me or death. Which one do you prefer?" For the first time in his life, Theodore had no bargaining chip, no money to throw at the problem, no reputation to intimidate with. He was utterly helpless. His lips moved, barely audible. Do it. That was all she needed. Amara worked with calm precision, her hands steady even as sweat trickled down her temples. She barked orders to the other nurses, orders that were obeyed without hesitation. Epinephrine, 1 milligram. Prepare for defibrillation. The paddles hummed as they charged. Clear. Theodore's body jolted violently as electricity surged through him. His chest fell still for a terrifying second before the monitor beeped erratically, then steadied into a fragile rhythm. "He's stabilizing," Amara murmured, relief flashing across her features. Dr. Hughes exhaled shakily. "You just saved his life, Johnson." But Amara wasn't looking at the monitors anymore. She was looking at Theodore, the man who had sneered at her only hours before. His eyes were glassy, but they lingered on her, filled with something he'd never shown her before. Not gratitude exactly. Something closer to confusion. Over the next 2 hours, Amara monitored his vitals, adjusted medications, and remained by his bedside even when other nurses offered to take over. She should have walked away after saving him. Pride demanded it. But duty kept her rooted. Around 3 a.m., the storm outside quieted, and the suite was lit only by the soft glow of monitors. Theodore stirred, groaning faintly. His hand twitched, reaching weakly toward the edge of the bed. Amara hesitated before moving closer. "Water?" she asked. His voice was rough, but clear enough. "Why did you help me?" She studied him for a long moment, the memory of his earlier insult still burning in her mind. "Because you're a patient. Because your life mattered, even when you acted like mine didn't." Theodore blinked, his gaze dropping. His lips trembled as if he wanted to respond, but the words refused to come. By morning, the hospital was buzzing. News had spread quickly. The great Theodore Lancaster had collapsed, and the nurse he'd humiliated was the one who saved him. Board members, investors, and reporters flooded the lobby, eager for details. The hospital administrator urged Amara to stay silent, to keep the narrative professional. But whispers swirled through the halls, carried by staff who had seen everything. For the first time in his career, Theodore Lancaster was the subject of pity, not envy. Later that day, as Amara walked past his room, she overheard his assistant whispering urgently, "Sir, if the press finds out you refuse treatment from a black nurse, your reputation will be destroyed. You need to spin this now." Amara froze in the hallway. So that was it. Even after everything, he was still thinking about appearances. But then, through the crack in the door, she saw something unexpected. Theodore's face, pale and drawn, wasn't full of arrogance anymore. His voice was hoarse, almost broken. "What if they already know?" he asked. His assistant hesitated. "Then we bury it. We bury her role in this. We say Dr. Hughes saved you." Amara's stomach dropped. Her jaw tightened. Was this her reward for saving his life, to be erased? That evening, when she returned to check his vitals, Theodore watched her carefully. His voice was quiet. "You're leaving, aren't you?" Amara adjusted the four, her tone flat. "Why wouldn't I? You'd rather pretend I wasn't here at all." He swallowed hard, the weight of her words pressing on him. For the first time, he didn't have an immediate comeback. Instead, he asked something she hadn't expected. "What would it take for me to make this right?" Amara's hand paused on the monitor. She stared at him, wondering if the question was sincere, or just another ploy from a man used to fixing problems with money. Before she could answer, the door burst open. Dr. Hughes rushed in, face pale. "We've got a problem. The tests just came back, and it's worse than we thought." Amara turned, her pulse quickening. "What do you mean?" Dr. Hughes held the chart tightly, his voice grim. "If we don't act fast, Mr. Lancaster won't survive the night." The silence in the hospital room shattered as Dr. Hughes handed over the lab results. His expression was grave, his normally steady voice shaking. "Mr. Lancaster is showing signs of a massive arterial blockage. The medication stabilized him temporarily, but it isn't enough. We're looking at a full cardiac arrest if this isn't dealt with immediately." Amara's stomach clenched. "How bad?" Dr. Hughes hesitated, eyes darting between her and the billionaire. 70% blockage in the left anterior descending artery. The kind we call a widowmaker. Theodore's already pale face drained of what little color remained. His heart hammered weakly against the monitor, a visible reminder of how fragile he had become. What are you saying?" he asked, his voice hoarse. Dr. Hughes exhaled slowly. "I'm saying we need an emergency intervention. Tonight. Stents at the very least. Possibly open heart surgery." For a man like Theodore Lancaster, used to commanding skyscrapers and bending entire industries to his will, the words landed like a death sentence. His chest tightened again, not just with pain, but with something new. Fear. Amara moved instinctively, lowering his bed, adjusting oxygen, her voice firm but calm. "You need to save your strength. Every ounce of stress makes this worse." Theodore tried to sit up, his pride pushing through the fear. "No. I can't. I have meetings tomorrow. My board." "Your board won't matter if you're dead," Amara cut in sharply. Her tone carried no deference, only truth. For once, no one in the room contradicted her. The billionaire blinked, stunned. He wasn't used to being spoken to like that. But deep down, some part of him knew she was right. By midnight, the hospital's upper floors buzzed with quiet chaos. Word of Theodore's condition had leaked despite desperate attempts to contain it. Paparazzi and reporters crowded the street below, their camera flashes like erratic lightning against the glass facade. Inside, the board of Lancaster Holdings flooded the lobby, demanding answers. Shareholders, lawyers, and even rival business magnates phoned relentlessly. But upstairs, in the dim light of room 504, all of that noise faded into irrelevance. Only the monitors mattered. Only the failing heartbeat of a stubborn man mattered. Amara sat at his bedside, her hand hovering near the fore-pump, ready for the next crisis. She didn't look at him like a billionaire. She looked at him like a human being balanced on the edge of mortality. "Why are you still here?" Theodore rasped suddenly. His eyes searched her face, weary but still burning with a faint ember of pride. "Because you need me," Amara answered simply. "You should have walked away. After the things I said to you." Amara studied him quietly. "I became a nurse to save lives, not to collect apologies. I don't get to pick which patients deserve to live. My job is to fight for all of them, even the ones who don't think I belong here." The words stung more than the pain in his chest. For years, Theodore had dismissed service workers as invisible. And now, one of those invisible people was the only reason he was still breathing. The hours dragged. Nurses cycled in and out, but Amara stayed. She watched the monitors with eagle-eyed focus, catching subtle changes before they became crises. Twice she adjusted his oxygen just in time. Once, when his heart stuttered into a dangerous rhythm, she steadied it with a dose no one else would have dared to administer without hesitation. "You're too stubborn for your own good," she muttered at one point, adjusting his blanket when he shivered. A faint smirk ghosted across Theodore's lips. "Takes one to know one." For a flicker of a moment, their eyes met. Something unspoken hung there, respect, fragile but undeniable. At dawn, his estranged sister, Margaret Lancaster, swept into the hospital suite, her heels clicking sharply against the polished floor. Dressed in an immaculate navy suit, she carried the weight of old grudges and fresh ambition. "Theodore," she said coldly, "you look dreadful." "Good morning to you too," he muttered weakly. Margaret turned on Dr. Hughes. "How bad is it really?" Dr. Hughes glanced at Theodore, then Amara. "Bad. He needs surgical intervention today. Without it, his odds are slim." Margaret's expression didn't soften. "Then schedule it. And if he doesn't survive," she shrugged, her meaning obvious, "the board will need strong leadership. I'm prepared to take over." Theodore's jaw clenched. "You've been circling like a vulture since Father's funeral." Margaret's lips curved into a thin smile. "Business is business. You taught me that." Amara's eyes narrowed. She could see the calculation in Margaret's gaze, the way she already saw Theodore's empire as hers to inherit. It ignited something fierce in Amara, not loyalty to his wealth, but fury at the coldness of family who saw him as nothing more than an asset. "You might want to worry less about his company," Amara said evenly, "and more about whether your brother survives the night." Margaret turned to her with disdain. "And you are the nurse who kept him alive when no one else could." Margaret blinked, taken aback by the confidence in Amara's tone. For the first time, someone other than Theodore had challenged her authority. She didn't like it. That afternoon, Theodore was prepped for the procedure. The surgical team was ready, but complications loomed. His condition had worsened. His blood pressure kept crashing. Amara leaned close, speaking quietly as the anesthesiologist prepared. "Mr. Lancaster, I need you to listen to me. This surgery is risky, but it's your only chance. You need to trust us. Trust me." His eyes locked onto hers. The arrogance, the pride, they were gone. What remained was raw vulnerability. "Promise me, you won't leave," he whispered. Her throat tightened. "I'll be right here when you wake up." And for the first time, Theodore believed her. Hours ticked by as the surgery began. Amara wasn't inside the operating theater, but she paced the hallway outside like a sentinel. Every fiber of her being was alert. Through the glass windows, she could see the team working under bright lights. She watched the monitors dip and spike, her breath catching every time alarms shrilled. Then, chaos. A nurse rushed out. "Code. He's crashing." Amara's heart slammed against her ribs. She gripped the window frame, watching as the surgical team scrambled to stabilize him. Chest compressions. Adrenaline. The cold paddle of defibrillators pressed against his bare skin. "Come on," she whispered under her breath. "Fight." Inside, his body jolted violently as electricity surged. The monitors flatlined for a second, a sound that froze every heart in the corridor. Then, suddenly, a faint rhythm. Weak. Fragile. But there. Amara sagged against the wall, tears pricking her eyes. He wasn't out of danger. But he was still alive. Hours later, near dusk, Theodore was wheeled out of surgery, pale and unconscious but clinging to life. Amara followed the gurney into recovery, refusing to leave. She sat beside him long after the others departed, exhaustion weighing on her. She thought about his earlier words. "Promise me you won't leave." She hadn't. She wouldn't. Her hand brushed his, a gesture she hadn't planned. To her shock, his fingers twitched weakly in response. His lips parted, a whisper escaping. "Amara!" Her breath caught. She leaned closer, straining to hear. But before she could respond, the monitors erupted in shrill alarms again. His heart rate spiked dangerously high, his body convulsing against the sheets. Dr. Hughes burst into the room, shouting for assistance. "Seizure! Get restraints now!" Amara froze in horror. This wasn't part of the expected recovery. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. Her eyes darted to the 4-line. A second bag of clear fluid was dripping into his system. She frowned. She hadn't authorized that. Then she saw the label. Her blood turned to ice. Theodore Lancaster wasn't seizing from surgery complications. Someone had just poisoned his 4. The shrill alarm of the heart monitor pierced the recovery ward like a siren, freezing everyone in place. Theodore's body convulsed violently against the sheets, his limbs jerking, eyes rolling back. "Seizure!" Dr. Hughes barked, rushing to the bedside. Nurses scrambled, grabbing restraints, adjusting oxygen. But Amara didn't move toward the patient immediately. Her eyes locked on the 4 stand beside him, her instincts screaming. A second bag of clear fluid was dripping steadily into Theodore's vein. Its label bore a name that shouldn't have been anywhere near his treatment plan. Potassium chloride. Amara's stomach dropped. In high doses, it was lethal, a chemical executioner disguised as medicine. Her training took over. "Stop that 4. Now!" The other nurses froze at her tone. She lunged forward, yanking the line from Theodore's arm just as his body arched in another convulsion. Blood welled briefly at the puncture site, but Amara clamped gauze over it, her hand steady even as her heart thundered. Dr. Hughes whipped around, furious. "What are you doing? That bag is poisoned." Amara snapped, thrusting the 4 toward him. "Look at the label." He snatched it, confusion twisting into horror as his eyes scanned the words. His face blanched. Who authorized this? The room fell silent except for the machine's alarms and Theodore's ragged, struggling breaths. Amara shoved aside fear and focused on the patient. "Get me a crash cart. 10 milligrams diazepam, now." A nurse scrambled. Amara held Theodore's head steady, whispering fiercely into his ear as if sheer will could anchor him. "Hold on, Mr. Lancaster. Don't you dare give up on me now." The seizure racked his body for another 30 seconds before the sedative coursed through his veins. Slowly, mercifully, the violent convulsions eased. His chest heaved, sweat plastering his dark hair against his forehead. The monitor stabilized into a weak but steady rhythm. He was alive. Barely. Amara exhaled shakily, only now realizing how close he had come to dying again. Dr. Hughes tore the poison 4 from her hands, storming to the door. "Security! Get hospital security up here immediately. No one enters or leaves this floor until we know who touched this patient's chart." But Amara wasn't listening. Her gaze swept the room, and landed on Margaret Lancaster. She stood in the corner, arms folded, face unreadable. Unlike the others, she hadn't moved a muscle during the chaos. Their eyes met. Margaret's lips curved into the faintest suggestion of a smile. Later, when Theodore was stabilized and sedated under heavy monitoring, Amara sat in the staff lounge, her hands trembling as she gripped a paper cup of coffee she couldn't drink. Dr. Hughes stormed in, face dark. Security found the 4-order. It came through under your login. Amara's head snapped up. What? That's impossible. Your username. Your password. Timestamped less than an hour ago. Her stomach churned. Someone framed me. Hughes rubbed his temples. I want to believe you. God knows you just saved his life. But the board will eat this alive. They'll claim you tampered with records, tried to poison him, then staged your own rescue. The walls seemed to close in around her. She could almost hear Margaret Lancaster's smooth, cold voice. Business is business. Amara shoved the untouched coffee aside. Who benefits if Theodore dies? Who benefits if I take the blame? Hughes sighed. You're asking the right question. But be careful. The people you're accusing, they don't play fair. By evening, word had spread through the hospital like wildfire. Staff whispered in corridors. Headlines flashed across television screens. Billionaire heir survives second near-death crisis. Poison plot inside Chicago General. Nurse under scrutiny in Lancaster case. Amara walked the halls with her head high, but she felt the eyes on her. Some were sympathetic. Others were suspicious. When she returned to room 504, Margaret was already there, standing by her brother's bedside like a queen surveying her domain. You've been busy, Margaret said coolly. I've been keeping him alive, Amara shot back. Margaret tilted her head. Or trying to make yourself indispensable. Convenient that you were the only one who noticed that 4-bag. Amara stepped closer, fury boiling beneath her calm surface. You think I don't see through you? If your brother dies, you inherit everything. But if he lives, you're just another shareholder. Margaret's eyes gleamed. And if he lives because of you, then what? Do you imagine he'll elevate you above your station? Marry the nurse who wiped his brow while he was unconscious. Amara's pulse hammered. The insinuation wasn't just cruel, it was dangerous. Margaret was already planting seeds of scandal, crafting a narrative where Amara was nothing more than an opportunist. You're wasting your time, Amara said coldly. He's stronger than you think. And when he wakes up, he'll know who really saved him. Margaret smiled thinly. If he wakes up. That night, Amara sat by Theodore's bed again, exhaustion etched into her face. His hand rested limply in hers, his skin still too cold. She whispered softly, not knowing if he could hear. You've survived too much to let her win. You hear me? Don't you dare give her your empire. Don't you dare give up on yourself. For a long while, nothing happened. Then, faintly, his fingers curled around hers. Tears blurred her vision. He was still in there. At 2 a.m., she dozed in the chair beside him. A sudden creak jolted her awake. Someone was in the room. Her head snapped up. A shadow moved near the 4 stand. A gloved hand reaching for the line. Amara's heart leapt to her throat. She surged to her feet, grabbing the wrist in a lightning-fast grip. The intruder spun, eyes wide under the mask. Not Margaret. Not a stranger. One of the hospital nurses. Someone Amara had worked beside for months. Someone she trusted. Why? Amara hissed, struggling as the nurse yanked free and bolted toward the door. Alarms blared as Amara shouted for help, sprinting after her down the corridor. The nurse shoved past staff, dodging orderlies, her footsteps echoing like gunfire in the sterile hallway. Amara chased, adrenaline burning away her fatigue. They burst into the stairwell, footsteps pounding down the concrete steps. On the landing, the nurse whipped around suddenly, a syringe glinting in her hand. Amara froze. The needle hovered inches from her chest. "I told you to stay out of this," the nurse spat, voice trembling with desperation. "But you wouldn't. And now you'll wish you had." The stairwell echoed with ragged breaths and the sharp clang of shoes on concrete. Amara's back pressed against the cold wall, her eyes locked on the syringe hovering inches from her chest. "Move!" the nurse hissed, her voice strained with fear and fury. Amara's pulse pounded. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but something steadier rose inside her, the same force that had carried her through every long night shift, every confrontation, every act of quiet defiance in the face of arrogance. "No," she said evenly. "I won't let you touch him again." The nurse's eyes flickered, panic breaking through her mask of resolve. Her hands trembled just enough. Amara seized the moment. With a swift motion, she knocked the syringe aside. It clattered to the floor, spilling harmless liquid across the steps. The other woman lunged, but Amara shoved her back against the railing, pinning her arm. "Who sent you?" Amara demanded. The nurse's breath came in ragged gasps. "You don't understand. I had no choice." Footsteps thundered above them. Security burst through the door at the top of the stairwell. The nurse sagged in Amara's grip, the fight draining out of her. "They'll kill me if I talk," she whispered. Amara's eyes hardened. "They'll kill him if you don't." Security tore the nurse away, cuffing her wrists as she wept. Amara bent briefly to pick up the syringe, her hands shaking now that the adrenaline was ebbing. She didn't need answers tonight. She already knew enough. Someone powerful wanted Theodore Lancaster dead, and they'd corrupted even the staff sworn to protect him. But he was still alive, still fighting. And she wasn't going to let him lose. By morning, the hospital buzzed with tension. Margaret Lancaster was on every phone in sight, her voice sharp as she tried to spin events to her advantage. The board would hear about this. Lawyers would be called. The press already circled like vultures. Amara ignored them all. She returned to room 504, exhausted, her uniform smudged with sweat and blood. She sank into the chair beside Theodore's bed and rested her forehead against his arm. "Please," she whispered, voice breaking. "Wake up. I'm running out of ways to fight them without you." For a long moment, there was only the soft beep of the monitor. Then, faint pressure. His fingers twitched against hers. Her head snapped up. His eyelids fluttered, then opened, hazy and unfocused. "Amara!" His voice was rough, barely audible, but it was his. Relief crashed over her so powerfully she had to grip the bedside rail to steady herself. "Yes, I'm here." He blinked, confusion clouding his features. "What happened? You almost died. Twice." Her throat tightened. "Someone tried to poison you. They framed me for it. But I stopped them. You're safe now." His gaze softened, focusing on her for the first time. "You saved me." Amara swallowed hard. "I wasn't going to let you die. Not like that. Not alone." Theodore closed his eyes briefly, a single tear slipping down his temple. "All my life, I thought money could protect me, that it made me untouchable. But when it mattered, all the money in the world couldn't keep me alive." He looked at her again, voice trembling. "Only you could." Amara reached for a cloth, gently dabbing sweat from his brow. "It's not about money, Theodore. It never was. Life doesn't care how many millions are in your account. It only cares whether you treat people with dignity, whether you learn to lean on others instead of standing above them. He let her words settle, as if each syllable carved away the arrogance that had once defined him. For the first time in years, he wasn't Theodore Lancaster, billionaire, master of empires. He was just a man, fragile, grateful, alive because a nurse he had dismissed refused to let him go. The next days blurred with recovery. Federal agents arrived, investigating the conspiracy surrounding the Poison Four and the embezzlement uncovered in his companies. Margaret's name surfaced again and again in whispered conversations. Her empire of manipulation was crumbling. Through it all, Amara stayed by his side. She monitored his vitals, adjusted his medications, and when the exhaustion caught him, she read aloud softly. African proverbs her grandmother had passed down, stories of resilience, dignity, and justice. On the third evening, Theodore spoke again, his voice stronger. "Amara, I owe you more than my life. I owe you my eyes being opened." She looked at him steadily. "Then don't waste what you've been given. You have power, Theodore. Use it for more than yourself." His lips curved into the faintest smile. "You'd make a better board chair than half the men I've ever worked with." "I'm not interested in your boardroom," she said firmly. "I'm interested in you becoming the kind of man who doesn't need rescuing from his own pride." Her words cut, but not cruelly. They cut like surgery, removing poison so healing could begin. 2 weeks later, the press gathered outside Lancaster Tower as Theodore made his first public appearance since his hospitalization. Cameras flashed, microphones surged forward, eager for scandal. But when he stepped onto the podium, Amara was beside him. Not in the shadows, not hidden behind the scenes, beside him. 2 weeks ago, Theodore began, his voice carrying over the crowd, I nearly lost my life. Not because of illness alone, but because of arrogance. I refused the help of a nurse, the most skilled, dedicated professional I've ever met, simply because I was blinded by prejudice. And when it mattered most, that same nurse saved me, twice. Without her, I would not be standing here today. Gasps rippled through the reporters. Flashes exploded. Margaret, watching from the crowd, went pale. I built my empire believing wealth was protection, Theodore continued. But I've learned a harder, greater truth. Protection comes from people. From respect. From recognizing the dignity of those we dismiss as less than. True worth doesn't come from money. It comes from character. He turned toward Amara. His voice softened. I disrespected you. I tried to reduce you to your uniform, your role. But you were the one person who treated me like a human being when everyone else treated me like a title. You gave me back my life. And from this day forward, I promise to live it differently. Applause broke from the crowd. Not polite, not staged, genuine. For once, Theodore Lancaster wasn't admired for his fortune, but for his humility. Amara stood silently, her chin high, her presence radiating the quiet strength of someone who needed no spotlight to validate her worth. She hadn't saved him for glory, or power, or praise. She had done it because it was right. And that was the truth Theodore carried with him for the rest of his days. That night, back in the quiet of his hospital suite, Theodore turned to her once more. You could have walked away. After the way I treated you, you should have. Why didn't you? Amara's eyes softened. Because true care doesn't measure worth in dollars or arrogance. It sees the human being underneath. And whether you were willing to see me or not, I was always willing to see you. Theodore closed his eyes, humbled to tears. For the first time, he understood the weight of grace. The story of Theodore Lancaster spread far beyond Chicago. Not as a tale of money or scandal, but as a reminder. True worth is not measured in wealth, but in respect, in how we treat those we think are beneath us. And for Theodore, the billionaire who once believed himself untouchable, salvation came not from his fortune, but from the courage of a nurse who showed him the meaning of humanity.